You're watching ChronicleChamber.com. My name is Scott, and today we're going to be talking about a short story that appeared in the pages of Flash Gordon Quarterly Issue 2. So you may be wondering yourself, hey Scott, this is a Phantom fan channel. Why are we talking about a Flash Gordon book? And that's a great question. But the quarterly series, a little bit different. It features side stories of Flash Gordon characters like Prince Baron, who's seen here on the cover, but also Elseworlds tales and multiverse stories. All these are put out by Mad Cave Studios, so they're all kind of interconnected in a way. And this issue covers a side story that kind of fills the gap between Defenders of the Earth issue 4 and the forthcoming Defenders of the Earth issue 5. So if you've been following our Defenders of the Earth coverage and that series, you don't want to miss this book because it does have a short story that kind of fills in the gap on some of the things going on and some of the information that is playing in the background with the main narrative across that series. So let's check it out. We have Dale's story, a Flash Gordon Defenders of the Earth tale, written by DiDio with art by Stefano Simeone. This story, while short, is kind of a fill-in between Defenders of the Earth issue 4, which you can find a review of at ChronicleChamber.com, and the forthcoming Defenders of the Earth issue 5. It talks about the resurgence of Dale Arden, who just reappeared into the Defenders of the Earth series within the last 2 issues. We got a little cameo of her at the end of issue 3, and then she was fully throughout issue 4 as our heroes united and kind of joined forces against the armies of Crotan, Octon, and Garrix, who all have returned to wreak havoc on the Earth. So in this story, we open up with a little note about how Flash Gordon and Dale Arden have a love story that kind of crosses the multiverse here, and in this case is kind of a clue as to what we might expect from Defenders of the Earth. For those of you who are reading Defenders of the Earth and Flash Gordon and are looking forward to the forthcoming The Phantom book from Mad Cave Studios, we get this little note of the word multiverse here, which might clue us in that Defenders of the Earth is a separate universe, kind of its own thing, maybe not connected to the main Flash Gordon title and possibly not connected to the main Phantom title that is coming out. We have a lot of talk about Not My Phantom at Chronicle Chamber, and in this one it kind of reaffirms this idea that, hey, maybe this Phantom will be his own thing and not necessarily the main one that we'll be seeing going forward at Mad Cave Studios. But this story kind of goes into how Dale Arden found herself in the computer mainframe that Rick Gordon tapped into at the end of issue 3 of Defenders of the Earth. So she's kind of viewing herself, seeing the body of a woman, which is her, and Flash Gordon, when she was killed in the original series, and it was kind of re-highlighted and revisited in issue 1 of this new series. And so she finds herself trapped trying to escape from the computer mainframe here when she's spoken to by a voice in red here. This is Octon, which we saw Octon in issue 3 and issue 4 of Defenders of the Earth as well. And so Octon talks kind of funny. He has a very villainous, merciless, cold, brooding voice, which makes sense, I guess, because he's a computer. But here he's calling Dale Arden a prisoner of war, telling her that he basically plucked her consciousness, mind, body, and soul from her body and put her into this computer mainframe. And so as she's going through her memories here, kind of going through the love story she had with Flash Gordon in these pages, to their kiss, while here's Flash shooting a bot that belongs to Garrix's armies, and here's old school Defenders of the Earth, Ming the Merciless right here. There's the birth of Rick Gordon. So kind of a little brief history of this universe's Flash Gordon and Dale Arden. The art here, honestly, I love. Stefano Simeone did the artwork and the colors, and it's just beautiful. Kind of has this, it's kind of got a cartoony style. Everything's kind of elongated and stretched. Proportions aren't necessarily human as much as they are more cartoony, with a lot of curves and bending of the arms and natural kind of circular motions around the muscles. But the coloring is very bright. It's also kind of equally cartoony, but it has this, it's not quite pastel, but almost kind of like this pastel-like quality where there's not a clear delineation between the colors, more of a blend between the coloring, between the dark and the light. And you have a lot of, each page obviously kind of focuses, I'll go back one, you have a lot of green there and then kind of this sand swept look. And then we're back to the green and blues. It's very pretty to look at. But in the course of this story, we learn that Dale Arden, in her mind in this computer, has access to everything Octon has in his mainframe, while Octon has access to everything in her mind. So he knows her history, he knows her memories, you know, and he explains how he did this to her. And, you know, that he wants her by his side. That's kind of the big thread we learn in this story as we go through, is that Octon is this computer that was built by Ming the Merciless to control his army, control and build armies for him. And it was used using the intelligence of Hans Zarkov, which is an old school Flash Gordon character. He's kind of the scientist that brought Flash and Dale to space. You know, he's now deceased, but his mind, or at least part of his mind, has been stripped of his emotions and thrown into this machine that Ming the Merciless built. So it's our clue that, you know, Ming the Merciless has this power to rip minds and intelligences, do what he wants to them, and then reinsert them elsewhere, which obviously is kind of how we got Dale Arden in this spot. And so we kind of revisit that. That is explained. It's something that wasn't explained to the fullest in the pages of Defenders of the Earth. So this is a nice supplementary explanation of that. But the weird thing we get in here is down at the bottom here, he's telling Dale that, you know, Octon wants the perfect companion. He wants, on this page, we see a queen by his side. Kind of a bizarre thing for a machine to say, you know, especially since they're both now computers, so there's no, you know, there's no real point necessarily. But obviously we're learning that Octon has his own machinations for what might be beholden in the future of Defenders of the Earth. He seems to have his own plans. He seems upset that he's always been relegated to the number 2, who's just the builder and controller of the armies, but never the leader. And so something that has been on my mind reading this is, if you've been following Defenders of the Earth, you know, Crotan, seen right here, is clearly the big bad. You know, he's been the big bad of the series. He's running Baron Atomics. He's taking over the world. He has ice soldiers. You know, it's been revealed that he's fully fledged a villain at this point. But there's got to be a hook or a switch in there at some point, some kind of shoe to drop. And I have long been thinking that Ming the Merciless would return. And he possibly could through Octon. Or maybe Octon is the big bad. It's hard to say, but it definitely seems like Octon has his own machinations and aspirations. Near the end of the story, we learn that Dale realizes that she has the power to tap into all of Octon's information and systems, just like he could tap into her memories. And so that's how she finds her way to where Rick Gordon was hacking into the system at the end of issue 3 of Defenders of the Earth, which, if you've read issue 4, you know that Dale Arden, you know, downloads herself and presents herself to Flash and Rick, and they're all back together as a whole unified Defenders of the Earth team again, with her kind of helping coordinate and alert them and warn them and plan for battle. So that's the meat and bolts of this, or nuts and bolts, I should say, of this storyline here. It's short, but it is interesting because it does kind of set up expectations for what's to come when Defenders of the Earth returns with issue 5 in a couple months from now. So possibly a betrayal from Octon, you know, of Crotan. Maybe he will usurp Crotan and become the big bad for this series. Or maybe there's some other intelligence mixed in there with Dr. Hans Zarkov, because Ming has always been fascinated by using intelligence to his own means, and possibly maybe Ming has made himself smarter by combining his own intellect with Zarkov in this Octon machine. And we know, obviously, that Crotan has the body of Dale Arden still alive, and that could possibly come into play with Dale returning to her body in the future, or it could be a way to show us early on that minds can be transplanted into different bodies. So we'll have to wait and see what comes next, but if you're looking to complete your collection of Defenders of the Earth Tales from Mad Cave Studios, you might want to pick up Flash Gordon Quarterly number 2, because it does have that side story, which is informative of some of the background things going on behind the main narrative of this, deeply layered storyline between our heroes, Crotan, and all these other sub-villains. If you want more reviews of Defenders of the Earth, you can check out chroniclechamber.com. You can also get more reviews and news information and whatnot for any upcoming Phantom-related books, video games, etc. If you want to hear more from me personally, you can check out scottwaldenwrites.com or find me on Threads and Instagram at writer_Scott. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you with the next issue.